The night had started like any other, but by midnight, Arven Hale found himself standing in the orange glow of the city streetlights, holding the weight of a choice that could destroy his job or save a life. The rain had stopped only moments earlier, leaving the pavement slick and reflecting the dim lights of the empty financial district. His heart thudded heavily as he stared at the crumpled figure leaning helplessly against the wall outside the closed lounge. It was his CEO, Sierra Loxley, unsteady, cold, and barely conscious. She wasn't just drunk, she was in danger, confused and alone, and in that moment Arven knew that walking away would haunt him forever. But staying to help her, that could cost him everything. If you believe kindness and second chances matter, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Spark. It helps us bring more heart-touching stories your way. Earlier that day, the world felt very different. A clear blue sky stretched above the city, the sun warm and the breeze gentle enough to feel hopeful. Arven, a 34-year-old single dad, had rushed through the morning chaos of packing lunches, tying shoes, and calming his 7-year-old son Rowan, who hated being late for school. The smell of oatmeal still lingered in their small apartment as they hurried to catch the bus. Arven carried an exhaustion that settled deep into his bones, the kind that comes from working 2 jobs and trying to give a child stability after the tragedy of losing a spouse too young. But he never complained. Rowan's small smile kept him moving. At Loxley Innovations, Arven worked quietly in the background as an operations assistant, one of the dozens of employees who kept things running without ever being noticed. The building was bright, modern, and humming with daytime energy as sunlight poured through tall glass windows. Everyone here knew Sierra Loxley, the CEO with a reputation as sharp as her tailored suits. She was brilliant, powerful, respected, but also distant and intimidating, especially to people like Arven. She moved through the hallways like a force of nature, her presence enough to silence conversations. Arven rarely interacted with her beyond polite greetings, and he certainly never expected to cross paths with her outside work. But fate had its silent ways of interweaving lives. That afternoon, Sierra had announced an emergency investors' dinner, throwing the entire company into rapid preparation. Arven worked past his shift handling logistics and coordinating deliveries, with the sunlight gradually softening through the window until dusk settled in. By the time the event ended and the last guest left, the building had grown quiet, leaving only the hum of machinery and the distant sound of traffic. Arven finished packing up the event materials, his mind drifting to Rowan and the promise he had made to tuck him in that night. When he stepped outside near midnight, he noticed a familiar silver car parked crookedly near the curb. Something felt off, his instincts pricked, tightening his gut. He recognized Sierra's driver pacing anxiously near the vehicle, phone pressed to his ear, distressed and muttering that Sierra had wandered off. Arven didn't know why, but a sense of responsibility flickered inside him. Maybe it was because he knew what losing control looked like. He had seen his late wife in similar moments near the end of her illness, vulnerable, scared, unable to ask for help. You didn't walk away from someone who needed saving, no matter their title. Arven began searching the dimly lit surroundings, following the faint sound of stumbling footsteps until he reached the side street beside the closed lounge. And there she was, Sierra Loxley, the woman who commanded boardrooms and built an empire, now fragile and alone, leaning against a wall for balance. She tried to stand but nearly collapsed. Her breath was uneven, her eyes unfocused, her confidence dissolved into something painfully human. Arven reached her just in time, steadying her before she hit the ground. She murmured broken words, the kind spoken when emotions run deeper than sobriety allows. He realized with a heavy heart that this was not the first time she had faced the night feeling this lost. Arven wasn't sure what to do next. Taking her home could be misinterpreted. Calling emergency services might humiliate her or trigger gossip. Leaving her was not an option, so he made a choice, not as an employee but as a father, as someone who understood vulnerability and dignity. He helped her into the back seat of her own car while her panicked driver thanked him endlessly, and when she continued to sway and mutter incoherently, it became clear she needed someone to ensure she got safely inside her apartment. So Arven went along, guiding her carefully through the quiet hallway, unlocking her door with the spare key the driver provided. The apartment was warm, and filled with soft lamplight. Sierra didn't speak coherently, but she clung to Arven's arm as if afraid of slipping into some abyss. He helped her sit, brought her water, made sure she was stable, and covered her with a blanket. As he turned to leave, she murmured a single word, almost inaudible, a quiet thank you, raw and unguarded. And in that whisper, Arven glimpsed a woman buried beneath layers of power and pressure, someone carrying far more pain than she let the world see. The next morning arrived with sunlight spilling across the company's lobby floors, and Arven carried a weight he couldn't shake. What if someone had seen him? What if Sierra believed he had overstepped? He couldn't afford to lose the job that paid their rent and kept Rowan in school. Anxiety followed him with every step, his stomach twisting whenever he thought about facing her again. He tried to focus on his work, but his mind replayed the night like a broken reel. By noon, word had spread that Sierra was back in the building. Her arrival was as commanding as always, but something was different. She moved more slowly, her expression softer, her steps deliberate. Arven avoided her floor entirely, hoping the day would simply pass without incident. But by mid-afternoon, his supervisor informed him that Sierra had personally requested to see him in her office. The words nearly knocked the air out of his lungs. He climbed the stairs with dread tightening his throat. The bright daylight from the windows made the hallway feel longer, stretching his anxiety with each step. When he entered her office, Sierra stood by the window, her back to him, sunlight outlining her profile. The room was silent except for the distant hum of city life. Arven braced himself for reprimand, termination, or worse. But when she turned around, the look on her face stunned him. There was no anger, no embarrassment twisted into defensiveness. Instead, her expression held something rare and raw, a quiet humility touched with gratitude. She studied him for a long moment, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. The daylight softened her usually sharp features, making her appear almost gentle. Then, in an unexpected shift that shocked every employee who later learned about it, Sierra publicly acknowledged Arven's kindness during the morning team briefing. She didn't reveal personal details, but she praised him for going far beyond the call of duty in ensuring the safety of a colleague. People whispered, puzzled by the sudden warmth in her voice and the unusual emotion behind her eyes. It wasn't the reaction anyone expected from the notoriously reserved CEO, but the biggest shock came quietly after the meeting, when Sierra found Arven one-on-one and told him she wanted to promote him to a managerial position, a role that would double his salary and allow him to be home earlier with Rowan. She explained that people who choose compassion over self-interest were the kind of people she wanted leading the company. Her voice wavered slightly when she admitted she couldn't remember most of the night, but she remembered the safety she felt and the way he didn't treat her like a fallen leader but like a human being. Arven stood speechless, overwhelmed by relief and disbelief. He accepted the promotion with tears threatening to break loose, the weight of financial fear easing from his shoulders for the first time in years. It felt like life had shifted in a single day, pushing open a door he never thought he'd reach. Over the next weeks, the changes continued. Sierra became more present, more approachable. She checked in on Arven, asked about Rowan, and even shared small glimpses of her own life, the loneliness, the pressure, the grief she had hidden behind her success. Their interactions remained professional, but an unspoken respect formed between them, built not on titles but on the night when a man with nothing to gain